Imagine this for a second. It's, I don't know, a Tuesday morning. You're sitting there with your coffee, maybe scrolling on your phone, or if you're feeling a bit old school, you've actually got a physical newspaper spread out on the table.
You know, the kind with the ink that smudges on your fingers?
Yes, exactly that. You can hear the crinkle of the paper.
Yeah.
And you're just scanning the personals, not really looking for anything specific. Use sofa, maybe a part-time job, something like that.
Just glazing over the usual stuff.
And then something it stops you cold.
It's buried in there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just 3 lines of text, but they almost seem to, I don't know, vibrate off the page.
They really do. It reads, "Teacher seeks pupil, must have an earnest desire to save the world. Apply in person."
Save the world. I mean, it sounds like the setup to a really bad joke.
Or a very expensive cult.
Right, or a very, very disappointing self-help seminar.
Exactly. And that is precisely what the narrator of our source material thought. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the book Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. And the narrator, our protagonist, he's a deeply cynical guy.
Very.
He sees this ad, and his first reaction isn't curiosity, it's anger. It's this genuine, visceral fury. He actually throws the paper on the floor, spits on it, which is such a great, gritty little detail, and then he can't help himself. He has to dig it out of the trash can.
He has to, because he's been there before, you know? You have to understand his mindset. He lived through the idealism of the 60s and 70s.
Right, he saw all the Save the World slogans.
He saw them turn into bumper stickers and fashion statements. He spent his youth genuinely looking for a teacher, for someone who actually knew how to fix things, and he came up empty every single time.
So when he sees this ad, he assumes it's just another charlatan, some guru waiting to take his money and tell him to, hug his neighbor and everything will be fine.
Which is why he goes. He's not going to learn. He's going to debunk.
Yes. He wants to walk in, see the fraud for what it is, and walk out. He wants that satisfaction of proving to himself yet again that there is no teacher. There are no answers.
But when he gets the address, he doesn't find a guru in a turban. He doesn't find a commune. He walks into this empty room in a totally ordinary office building.
Just a chair, a bookshelf, and a pane of glass. And on the other side of that glass is a full-grown gorilla.
And that is where our deep dive begins today. And I think it's really important to say, for you listening right now, this is not a story about a cute animal adventure. This is not King Kong.
No, not at all. It's not Planet of the Apes. This is a Socratic dialogue. It's a philosophical dismantling of modern civilization itself.
And the gorilla, whose name is Ishmael, he isn't just a proc. He is the teacher. And the subject he teaches isn't biology or, banana peeling.
No. His subject, he says, is captivity.
Captivity. That is the central theme we are going to unpack today. And we aren't just talking about the gorilla in the cage.
Not at all. We are talking about us. We are talking about you. The entire premise of Ishmael is that humanity, specifically our modern industrial civilization, is trapped in a story, a kind of prison of our own making.
A prison we don't even realize we're in. We are enacting a story that is leading us to total disaster, and we don't even know it's a story. We just think it's reality.
It's sort of like the Matrix before the Matrix existed, but instead of robots and simulations, it's about ecology and history and mythology.
There's a lot to get through. This book essentially rewrites the history of the world as we know it.
So let's start with the teacher himself. I mean, the obvious question is, how does a gorilla become a philosopher?
Well, it's a fascinating and actually a pretty heartbreaking backstory. Ishmael was born in West Africa back in the 1930s.
Okay.
He was captured as an infant. His mother was killed in the process, which, was sadly standard practice for collectors at the time. And he was sold to a zoo in the northeastern United States.
And this is where the first sort of awakening happens for him.
It is. He's in the zoo and he starts to think. He's a baby, but he has these memories of the wild, and he realizes that his life in the wild was, in his words, interesting and pleasant, but his life in the cage.
Boring and unpleasant.
Boring and unpleasant. And he starts to ask why, which is already a profound leap for any creature, right? But the real shift in his consciousness happens later. He gets sold from the zoo to a traveling menagerie.
A circus, basically.
Sort of, yeah, a freak show. And he notices this subtle but crucial difference in how humans behave. In the zoo, the visitors talked to each other. They would look at the animal, sure, but their conversations were amongst themselves.
Like, ooh, look at the gorilla, honey.
Exactly. But in the menagerie, the dynamic changed completely. People talked to him.
To him. How do you mean?
They would come right up to the bars and start making sounds at him. And he began to realize they were making sounds that were specific to him. He figured out he had a name.
And what was the name?
In the menagerie, they called him Goliath.
Goliath. So, the monster, the giant.
Precisely. And that realization that he had a name, that he was this individual entity in the eyes of these other beings, that was the birth of his personhood. He started to understand language by listening. He'd hear parents teaching their children, look at the duck, say a quack quack. He just absorbed all of it.
He becomes sentient in a way that we usually reserve only for humans, but he's still seen as Goliath, the beast.
Until a man named Walter Socolow enters the picture. And Socolow is a key figure.
Okay, who was he?
He was a wealthy Jewish merchant, and this was during the Holocaust. Socolow had lost his entire family in Europe, his parents, his siblings, everyone. He was in a state of deep suicidal gloom.
Oh, wow.
And he goes to the menagerie looking for a symbol. He wanted to see Goliath, the monster, perhaps to, project his anger about the Nazi Goliath that was destroying his people. He was looking for something to hate.
But that's not what he finds.
No, he looks into the gorilla's eyes and he doesn't see a monster at all. He sees a kindred spirit. He sees someone else who is trapped, alone, and suffering. So Walter Socolow buys him.
Just buys a full-grown gorilla from a circus.
He was a very wealthy man. He buys him, brings him home to this huge estate, and eventually, over time, they establish communication. Ishmael learns to speak telepathically, which is the one kind of sci-fi leap the book asks you to make.
Okay, so that's the one bit of magic.
It is. But the most important thing Socolow does isn't teaching him to speak, it's what he says to him. After they start communicating, he looks at him and he says, "You are not Goliath."
Wow. That gives me chills. You are not Goliath.
It's a complete restoration of his identity. He tells him, "I'm renaming you Ishmael."
Ishmael, the outcast from the Bible.
Exactly. The son of Abraham who was sent into the wilderness. By giving him this name, Socolow validates him as a person, but a person apart, a person with a unique outsider's perspective on the world.
And from there, Ishmael just becomes this voracious learner.
Completely. He reads every book in Sokolow's massive library. History, philosophy, science, religion, everything. He eventually surpasses Socolow in his understanding of the world.
So when Socolow dies, Ishmael is left alone again. And he ends up in this office room where our narrator finds him, having decided to become a teacher himself.
Right. And he tells the narrator, "My subject is captivity." And here's the analogy Ishmael uses to explain this, and it's brilliant. He talks about the youth revolt of the 1960s and 70s.
The hippies.
Yes. He says those young people woke up one day and realized something was deeply wrong. They wanted to escape this system. They wanted to be free, but they failed. And he asks the narrator, why?
And why do they fail?
Because they couldn't find the bars of the cage.
That's the kicker, isn't it? You cannot escape a prison if you don't know you're in one.
Exactly. If you think the prison is just the world or reality or the way things are, you never try to leave. You just, rearrange the furniture in yourself.
So Ishmael argues that we are captives. We're captives of a civilizational system that compels us to go on destroying the world in order to live.
We're enacting a script, a story that demands we devour the planet. But because we think this story is just reality, we can't stop. We don't even know there's another way.
Okay, so let's unpack this story. Ishmael makes a very big distinction between two fundamental groups of people. And he avoids all the usual labels. He doesn't say civilized and primitive.
No, because those are loaded terms, right?
Yeah.
Civilized implies good and advanced, while primitive implies backward and clumsy or savage.
They're value judgments.
They are. So Ishmael uses these neutral terms based on what the groups actually do. He calls the dominant culture, the people listening to this, the people who built skyscrapers and supermarkets. He calls us the takers.
The takers. And the other group.
He calls them the leavers. These are the hunter-gatherers, the indigenous peoples, the pastoralists, basically everyone else. The people who were here for 3 million years before the agricultural revolution.
Okay, so we have takers and leavers. The taker story started about 10,000 years ago with agriculture. The leaver story has been running for millions of years. What is the fundamental difference in their worldview?
It boils down to a single, simple premise. The taker premise, the story we are living by right now, is this. The world belongs to man.
The world belongs to man.
Conversely, the leaver premise is man belongs to the world.
And that sounds like something you'd see on a bumper sticker. But Ishmael argues this is literally the structural engineering of our entire society. The world belongs to man. That means we own it. It's our property.
It's ours to do with as we please. If we want to pave it, mine it, chop it down, well, it's ours. We have the right.
And to reinforce this story, to make sure we never question it, we have what Ishmael calls mother culture.
Mother culture. She's like the personification of societal reinforcement, the propaganda machine.
Explain that a bit more.
She is the voice in your head. She's the voice on the news, the voice in your history textbooks, the voice in movies. She hums in the background constantly from the moment you're born.
And what does she hum?
She hums the taker story. She tells us that our way of life is the only right way to live. She tells us that human history began 10,000 years ago with the invention of agriculture. Everything before that was just a long, dark preamble, a waiting room for civilization.
Right. Cavemen sitting around being miserable, waiting for us to show up and invent taxes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And mother culture's most important job is to convince you that there is no story being enacted at all. This is just reality. It's the way things are.
There's a specific example in the text that I absolutely love where the narrator tries to argue with Ishmael. He says, we don't have a creation myth. Lever cultures have myths. We have science. We have evolution.
And Ishmael just destroys him with the jellyfish analogy.
It's brilliant.
It is. It's a perfect reductio ad absurdum. Ishmael tells this little story about an anthropologist from another planet who comes to Earth and interviews a jellyfish.
Okay.
He asks the jellyfish, "Tell me the story of creation." And the jellyfish says, "Well, a universe began with a big bang billions of years ago. Then came the stars, then the planets, then the earth, then the oceans, then came single-celled organisms, then complex sea life, and finally jellyfish appeared." The unspoken implication being that the jellyfish is the climax of the entire universe. The whole cosmic drama was built just to get to the jellyfish. Right, the end of the story. And the narrator laughs at this. He thinks it's absurd. But then Ishmael turns it around and asks him, "Okay, now you tell me the taker story of creation."
And the narrator says?
He says, "Well, there was a big bang, then stars, then earth, then life, then mammals, then primates.
Yeah.
And finally, man appeared."
Boom. It's the exact same story. We just put ourselves at the end instead of the jellyfish.
We do exactly the same thing. We stop the story at us. We implicitly assume that creation stopped with man, that we are the end product, the pinnacle of evolution.
Mother culture teaches us that the universe was just this chaotic, meaningless mess until man arrived to manage it and give it purpose.
And this leads to what Ishmael calls the dirty trick, which is that we know better scientifically, but we don't act like it. We know about Copernicus. We know we aren't the physical center of the solar system.
Sure.
And we know about Darwin. We know we evolved from, as Ishmael puts it, slime. We're animals, but we haven't emotionally or culturally accepted the implications of that.
We still act as though we're exempt from all the rules.
Completely. We act as though we are biologically separate. We admit we come from the animal kingdom, but we behave as though we have transcended all biological laws. And because we secretly believe the world was made for us, we believe we have the divine right to rule it.
Which brings us to the next major segment, the spectacular failure of this story. Because let's be honest, if the world was made for us to rule, we're doing a pretty terrible job of it.
That is the crisis point, isn't it? The taker story says our destiny is to conquer and rule the world. We view nature as chaos or anarchy that needs our intelligent human ordering.
The goal is to turn the whole world into a paradise through absolute control. We want to control the weather, the oceans, the genes of every living thing.
But we haven't achieved paradise, have we? We have pollution, war, famine, mass extinction. So when you point this out to a typical taker, what's the excuse?
Well, humans are just flawed. It's human nature.
Exactly. We say we are greedy or stupid or inherently destructive. But Ishmael points out a massive logical fallacy there. We are looking at 10,000 years of taker history and calling that human nature,
while completely ignoring the 3 million years of lever history where these problems didn't really exist on a global scale.
Precisely. So it's not human nature that is flawed. It's taker culture. Our story is wrong.
And to explain why our culture is failing so badly, Ishmael uses the analogy of the flying machine. This is one of the most vivid and honestly terrifying images in the whole book.
It really sticks with you.
Okay, so walk us through it. Imagine an early aeronaut, a would-be inventor. He wants to fly.
Right. But he doesn't know the laws of aerodynamics. He doesn't even know there are laws of aerodynamics. He just thinks if he flaps hard enough, it'll work. So he builds this contraption with flapping wings and bicycle pedals.
He takes this machine to the edge of a very, very high cliff, and he pushes off. He starts pedaling like mad.
Now, because he's so high up, he doesn't hit the ground immediately. He's falling, but the air is rushing past him. He feels this incredible, exhilarating freedom. He looks down, and the ground is miles away, and he thinks to himself, I'm flying. I've done it.
But he's not flying. He's in free fall.
He's in free fall. And the Taker civilization, Ishmael argues, is that graft. We launched ourselves off the cliff 10,000 years ago when we decided to abandon the community of life and go our own way.
And for a long time, it felt like flight, right?
Oh, absolutely. We built pyramids, we invented writing, we built empires, we went to the moon. It was an incredible, exhilarating ride.
But now the ground is rushing up to meet us. We can see the ecological collapse. We can see the climate changing, the famines, the pollution. We're starting to realize we're not flying.
So what's our solution? What does Mother Culture tell us to do?
Pedal harder.
Pedal harder.
That's it. The problem, according to our story, is that we aren't controlling the world enough. We need more technology, more production, more mastery.
If we just pedal harder, we'll magically start to soar back up. But Ishmael says, you cannot pedal your way out of a free fall if your craft is not in compliance with the laws of aerodynamics.
You can't force a machine to fly if it fundamentally contradicts the laws of physics.
And you can't force a civilization to survive if it fundamentally contradicts the laws of life.
And this is the turning point of the whole dialogue. The narrator, like most of us would, assumes that there are no laws of life. We have laws of physics, sure, gravity is real. But how we live, that's up to us. It's a cultural choice. We can vote on it, make up our own rules.
But Ishmael says, no, there is a law, a biological law that governs all successful species, and he calls it the peacekeeping law, or sometimes the law of limited competition.
Okay, so this is where it gets into the nuts and bolts of ecology. How does he explain this law?
He starts with a puzzle. He describes a hypothetical, simple ecosystem. A's eat B's, B's eat C's, and so on. And he says, this community of life has existed successfully for 1 billion years. There must be a law they are all following. What is it?
And the narrator struggles. He guesses things like, they don't kill more than they need.
Right, all the usual things. And Ishmael says, no, that's not it. The law isn't found by observing what they do. The law is found by observing what they don't do.
What they don't do.
Yes. And after some discussion, they arrive at the rules. Rule number 1, you may compete for food, but you may not exterminate your competitors.
Right. Lions compete with hyenas for zebras, but they don't go out on a campaign to hunt down every single hyena just to make them dead.
Exactly. They compete, but they don't wage war on the competition itself. Rule number 2, you may not destroy your competitor's food supply to make room for your own.
So a lion doesn't go around killing all the grass just so the zebras have nowhere else to go.
Precisely. And rule number 3, which is the big one, you may not deny access to food in general. You can defend your kill, but you cannot declare that all the gazelles in the world belong to you and no one else can have any.
Okay, so those are the rules of the peacekeeping law. It's about limiting competition to preserve the entire community.
Yes. And then Ishmael asks the narrator, how does your culture stack up against this law?
And the answer is, we violate every single canon of it.
Every single one. Our form of agriculture, which Ishmael calls totalitarian agriculture, is a declaration of war on the world. We absolutely exterminate our competitors. We call them pests and vermin, coyotes, insects, weeds. We kill them on sight.
We violate Rule 2. We destroy our competitors' food by plowing under entire ecosystems, forests as grasslands to make room for our own.
And we violate Rule 3 on a scale that is unimaginable. We have put fences and no trespassing signs around literally all the food in the world. We have declared that it all belongs to us and everything else can starve.
So what's the result of following this law versus breaking it?
Following the law promotes diversity. When everyone limits their competition, it leaves room for thousands, millions of other species to thrive. Breaking the law, the Taker way, promotes homogeneity.
Just us and our food. Humans, cows, corn, wheat.
That's the goal. Turn the entire planet into one giant human feedlot. But here's the biological truth. Diversity creates resilience. Homogeneity creates fragility. A diverse ecosystem can survive a shock. A monoculture crop can be wiped out by a single blight.
He uses the hyena experiment to drive this home.
He does. He walks the narrator through a thought experiment. What would happen if a species of hyena decided to break the law? First, they kill all the lions to get more food for themselves.
Okay, so more food for hyenas.
Right. So the hyena population booms. But soon, they eat so many zebras that food becomes scarce again. So what's next? They have to kill the competitors for the grass to make more zebras.
So they start killing off all the other grazers.
Yes. And it just escalates. Any species that exempts itself from this law inevitably ends up having to destroy the entire community just to support its own out-of-control expansion.
Which is exactly what we're doing.
It's exactly what we're doing.
And this leads us directly into the population paradox. This is the part of the book where a lot of people get really defensive, right?
They do.
Yeah.
Because we have this deeply ingrained cultural idea that feeding the hungry is the ultimate moral good. And on an individual human level, of course it is. But Ishmael zooms the camera way out to the biological species level.
Okay, so what's his argument?
He presents an equation that is standard in population biology but sounds like heresy in taker culture. He quotes the anthropologist Peter Farb, who wrote, "Intensification of production to feed an increased population leads to a still greater increase in population."
Let's break that down. So food availability is what drives population growth.
Yes. To put it crudely but simply, if you leave a bowl of cat food out on your porch every night, you will get more cats. It's not the other way around. The cats don't all show up and then you decide to feed them. The food is what makes the population possible.
So Mother Culture tells us the story is, people are hungry, so we must grow more food to save them.
But Ishmael argues the biological reality is the reverse. We grow more food and therefore more people come to exist. He frames famine not as a tragedy to be solved by shipping and grain, but as nature's brutal but effective way of balancing a population against the carrying capacity of its habitat.
That is a very tough pill to swallow. It sounds incredibly heartless.
It does, and Ishmael acknowledges that. He's not advocating we let people starve. He's pointing out the flawed logic of our solution. He says that by importing food into a famine area, we aren't solving the problem of starvation.
We're just kicking the can down the road.
And making the can much, much bigger. We save 100,000 people today with food aid, which is a wonderful, compassionate thing to do. But those 100,000 people then have children. And in the next generation, we have 500,000 people living in an area that still can't support them. Now what?
We're locked in this vicious cycle. We produce food for 6 billion people, so we get 6 billion people. We work like mad to produce food for 7 billion, so we get 7 billion. We are literally destroying the planet to feed a population that we are creating by destroying the planet.
And the counter-argument is always, well, we can't just stop. But Ishmael points to the levers. Indigenous tribes didn't have this problem. Why? Because they had boundaries.
Right. He gives the example of the Navajo and the Hopi in the American Southwest.
Yeah.
They were neighbors. They had fixed territories.
Exactly. If a lever tribe's population got too big for its territory, they couldn't just expand into their neighbor's land without risking war and death. They couldn't just invent more food. So they had to develop cultural practices to limit their own population. They had to live within their means because they had no choice.
But the takers removed the boundaries. We said, the whole world is ours for the taking. So we never had to learn when to stop growing.
We never hit a hard wall. We just pushed the wall back again and again and again. And now we're pushing against the final wall, which is the carrying capacity of the entire planet.
This brings us to what I think is the most mind-bending part of the entire book, the theological twist. Ishmael takes the foundational story of our culture genesis, Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, and he completely flips the script on it.
This is a masterclass in literary interpretation. It's stunning. Ishmael suggests that the story of the fall wasn't written by our ancestors, the takers. It was written about them.
Written by the levers.
Yes, specifically by the Semitic herders, who were a lever people, watching the rise of their aggressive expansionist neighbors to the north, the agriculturalists, the first takers.
So the story of Adam and Eve is basically ancient enemy propaganda.
Or a cautionary tale, a diagnosis of what went wrong. Think about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We always assume good and evil means morality. You know, don't lie, don't steal, be nice to your neighbor.
Right. But it never made sense to me, even in Sunday school. Why would God forbid that? Why would God want humans to be morally stupid? It seems counterproductive.
Ishmael says that's a total misreading. He offers a different definition. He tells this little parable of the gods. The gods are all sitting around debating how to manage the world's ecosystem.
Okay.
One of them suggests sending a plague of locusts to the savannah. Another god objects, saying, well, that's good for the locusts, but it's very bad for the grass.
Right. A trade-off.
Exactly. Another god suggests sending a lion to eat a deer. Well, that's good for the lion, but it's bad for the deer. They quickly realize that in nature, nothing is absolutely good or evil. They don't have the wisdom to make these choices.
So what do?
They eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, And they gain the wisdom to manage this complex balance. They learn that the knowledge of good and evil isn't about human morality. It is the knowledge of who shall live and who shall die.
Who shall live and who shall die.
Yeah.
That's the power of the gods.
It is the exclusive power to manage the ecological community. Now look at Adam in the story. Adam represents the takers, the first agriculturalists. When Adam eats the fruit, he is making a declaration. He is saying, I don't need the gods to make these decisions. I will decide who lives and who dies.
And that is exactly what we did. With agriculture, we decided humans shall live, cows shall live, corn shall live, and wolves shall die, weeds shall die, locusts shall die. We took the power of life and death over the entire world into our own hands.
And that was the fall. By seizing that power, we cast ourselves out of the Garden of Eden. The garden represents the lever lifestyle living in the hands of the gods, hunting and gathering what is provided, being a part of the community.
And the fall represents the shift to agriculture, becoming the exhausted tiller of the soil, as the Bible says, cursed to forever carry the impossible burden of trying to rule the world, a job we are not wise enough to do.
He even ties it directly to Cain and Abel. Cain is the farmer, the tiller of the soil, the taker. Abel is the herder, the pastoralist, the leaver.
And Cain kills Abel.
Cain kills Abel. It's a symbolic and often literal retelling of the history of the agricultural revolution, wiping out the nomadic and hunter-gatherer tribes to seize their land for farming.
The entire story of Genesis is reframed as a tragedy about our culture's usurpation of a role we were never meant to have. We stole the keys to the car, but we have absolutely no idea how to drive.
A perfect summary.
So, okay, we've stolen the keys. We're in a flying machine that's actually in free fall. We're driving off a cliff. We're just pedaling as hard as we can.
Yeah.
What now? What is the takeaway from all this?
The central takeaway is that we are enacting a story that is fundamentally false. And that story is killing us. We are living as if the world was made for us to rule. And that story puts us at constant war with the very environment that keeps us alive.
And Ishmael says we are breaking a fundamental law, the law of limited competition. And you can't break a law of nature and get away with it. The penalty isn't a fine. The penalty is extinction.
But there is a choice. That is the hopeful part of the book, if there is one. The choice is to stop enacting the taker story.
How do you do that?
You have to silence mother culture. You have to consciously recognize the story she is telling you every day and choose not to believe it. You have to stop listening to the voice that says, this is the only way to live, there is no alternative.
And the goal isn't to save the world. I think that's a key point.
It's a huge point. The world doesn't need saving from us. The world will be fine. If we wipe ourselves out, life will go on. The jellyfish and the cockroaches will be perfectly happy. The mission is to save ourselves.
And to save ourselves, we have to change the story we are living. We have to abandon the story of conquest and adopt a different one.
A story that lever peoples lived for 3 million years. A story that works. We have to realize that man was not made to rule the world.
Which leads to the final, profound inversion of the taker premise. If the world wasn't made for man,
then man was made for the world.
And that changes everything, doesn't it? It changes how you see a tree, a river, a wolf. You aren't their boss. You're not the CEO of planet Earth.
You're their neighbor. You are a member of a community, not its ruler.
It's a profound shift in perspective, from ruler to member. And it leaves us with a final provocative thought. If we are just travelers here, if we are just one part of this incredible garden, how should we live our lives tomorrow?
That's the question Ishmael leaves with the narrator, and it's the question we want to leave with you. Can you find the bars of your own cage? Can you see the story that you are acting out every single day? Because until you see it, you have no hope of changing it.
This has been a heavy one, but an incredibly important one. The book is Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. If you haven't read it, go read it. It might just change your life. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.